Hello again, wrestling fans, and welcome to another edition of the Scumbags Wrestling Podcast. This is episode number 123. So thank you for joining us. We are live right now on Twitch, YouTube, and on Facebook. So if you're joining us, feel free to add a comment and we'll add them up, put them up there. You can be part of the discussion. If you'd like to be part of tonight's show, just send me a message as well, and I can get you in there, and we'll have you join us live. But if you're not with us live, you're listening to us on delay on Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast from. Either way, thank you for joining us. On this episode, going to run down some news for the wrestling, give a little bit of a look back at last night's AEW Dynamite show and last week's draft that happened on Friday and Monday. And then we'll also see Jonesy with This Week in History. And speaking of Jonesy, he still has a little bit of technical issues like he did last night for Fantasy Warfare Tournament. So he's just a little circled today still. Jonesy, you're in Niagara. How are you today?
Well, besides my phone, tomorrow is going to have a long day of, reformatting and whatnot. But my phone is I think 6 years old now, so
maybe time for an upgrade.
I hope I'm okay because I'm a little nervous not being shown on camera. So, I don't know. You might hear it in my voice.
Maybe. So, yeah, I'm just switching to the proper things for banners so I can get the right things scrolling across the bottom. But, this week in wrestling, starting off with over 15 superstars were missing from the draft. I'm going to look at the draft in a little bit. As I said, got some graphics to show where people went all over the place. But, there was only 60 people-ish that were put into the two pools on Monday and Friday. They split up the roster and said only these guys were available for that day and these ones are available for Monday. But missing from that list were guys like John Cena. Of course, he's part-timer coming and going. Becky Lynch, obviously off pregnant, but Seth Rollins is over on SmackDown now, so most likely she'll end up over there when she is available to come back, unless he's back over on Raw before that time. Goldberg, he comes and goes. I guess it doesn't matter where he is. Big Show, we just last saw him on Raw getting beat up with the lights out, and Randy Orton wearing those welder's glasses or night vision goggles. Edge still doing some rehab for his torn triceps. Samoa Joe out with a concussion, but doing commentary for Raw. There was the Forgotten Sons, and they're still forgotten, especially after, I believe, Riker was that made some interesting comments, socially unacceptable, I guess. So people were not down with that. And so their whole team, Forgotten Sons, has been taken out. Sonya Deville, who's out since their I Quit match, and Loser Leaves at SummerSlam. Jinder Mahal, he's out with an injury. Bo Dallas, where people were hoping he was going back to NXT, but that didn't even happen. There's also the Singh brothers who are stuck in Canada. Mojo Riley, for no reason, he was not included. Jimmy Uso, who's out, but Jay was in the pool, staying on SmackDown. Ivar, same with Eric. Eric was in, but Ivar was out. Both are out with injuries, and there was nobody from NXT. Samoa Joe, I mentioned a moment ago, just is doing commentary for Raw, but he says that he is not done with his in-ring career. He is having fun, though, doing commentary and seeing other options. And one of those options is also doing voiceover work for Warner Brothers, which when I heard about that made me think, is he one of the voices going to be part of I think there's supposed to be a new Space Jam movie being done, and that would definitely be Warner Brothers, so he could be a part of that if that's happening. Then there was news also that Candy Cartwright, she came out when everything was going on with the speaking, and she talked about her relationship with Matt Riddle, and basically was calling him out for things that happened in their relationship. He openly admitted he cheated on his wife with her, but just certain things were said that he possibly did, but he's denying it. And she's now filed a lawsuit for $10 million or more than $10 million towards Matt Riddle, Evolve, Gabe Sapolsky, and WWE for emotional distress, how it affected her career, attorney fees, and stuff like that. Because I guess after the stuff with Matt, she lost bookings with WWE and Evolve, but she was actually with Evolve until their last show. And WWE or somebody from WWE did send her a message saying that due to issues with another wrestler, her working for them might not be a best option. So she might have a leg to stand on there, but I don't think she's going to get $10 million from all four of these outlets that she's trying to sue. And currently, WWE says that they haven't received any paperwork from any lawyers, but are ready and willing to defend themselves if that comes up. So before I continue on, Jonesy, any thoughts on that?
Well, I would definitely like to talk to a lawyer for, a company like WWE. That must be quite fun and interesting all at the same time. And yeah, 10 million, you shoot high so you can get, some pocket change.
Yeah, well, they do have Jerry McDermott, or McDivitt, should I say. And he's definitely been on the payroll of Vince for a long time with all the legal actions that he's had to deal with over the years. So she's going to have a hard time proving anything, I think. Continue on. AEW is trying to blame WWE for their recent outbreak of COVID, citing issues of WWE and NXT talent hanging out with their talent because of the cross relationships, such as the Hardy brothers. There's Adam Cole and Britt Baker, a whole bunch of different interrelationships, Lana and Rusev or Miro, but it goes both ways. Just because they might get it, if you're worried that much, stop your talent from mingling, even though it is family that are having problems, or just deal with it as it comes along. More legal news. Alberto Del Rio could face life in prison. He was charged in May with forcing himself on a woman and attacked her, even including kidnapping and stuff like that. He was indicted by the grand jury in Texas and will be going to trial on January 25th next year, 2021. He could serve anywhere from 5 to 99 years in jail, get $10,000 fine, combination of all of it. But if he's found guilty with kidnapping, it's not looking good. And I would hope that nobody else decides to book this guy. He has been nothing but trouble for the last years, caused issues with Paige. There's a lot of more details and full story that can be found through the PW Insider website. Just a lot of disturbing stuff that's involved with this arrest and the charges. Just really not the greatest guy in the world. Lars Sullivan is back on WDTV. Saw him attack people on Friday night and Monday night, and has been officially drafted over to SmackDown. But he was off for a while due to injury, and then stuff came out about him doing some gay slurs towards bodybuilders, and then it came out that he did some gay porn, and all that, I guess, got figured out, and he's been brought back. And just after he's been brought back, more things are surfacing that he was harassing a married woman who was a yoga instructor, asking for booty shots and just being very inappropriate. I don't know if this guy needs to be around or not. Any thoughts on that before I continue, Chris? Or on either of the stories?
Some men and women out there are just pigs, and they have trouble adjusting to today's society, which is the locker room talk and smack and stuff like that towards the opposite sex is just not tolerated anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Even the stuff with Del Rio, like I said, I hope nobody ends up booking him ever again,
Oh,
especially if.
I do hope someone books him again. The Mexican prison wrestling league, I'm sure, is quite thrilled that he will be joining their ranks soon.
Well, down in Texas, you never know. So, yeah. Paige is claiming that she's feeling better after her various surgeries and screws and plates put in her neck. And she even tweeted a photo showing the neck bracelet she had to wear for a while, but has also basically said she's ready, put her in, coach. She's ready to go. Britt Baker saw this and even challenged Paige to a match, saying, "Let's wrestle." Of course, that's not going to happen since Paige is still under contract to WWE, and Britt Baker works for AEW. But if they ever get a chance to be in the same company, might be a good match to see. Jericho posted a tweet and later deleted it, saying stuff about Jim Cornette, because Jim Cornette is always against what AEW is doing because of the lack of logic and even embarrassment that Chris Jericho is doing, working with certain people, and in Cornette's mind, just taking a paycheck and not caring about what's going on type deal. He's getting to just have fun instead of being serious and getting paid for it. So he's almost like ripping off Tony Khan in Cornette's opinion. But Jericho said that basically if Cornette would just stop bashing him and bashing AEW, he'd probably have a. And that tweet did get deleted. I think Dave Meltzer got involved as well, instead of just letting it be between Cornette and Jericho. But Cornette did respond on his recent podcast, the drive-through, when he was asked about it, and said that he does not want a job with AEW. There's not enough money to pay him to work for AEW. And because of that, he feels that he can be honest with the fans on his opinion instead of sugarcoating stuff and just nodding and being a yes person for money. So I don't see that changing anytime soon. Cornette is very opinionated. I know Cornette's not really your cup of tea for listening to podcasts, but I know Steven is. He's part of the cult of Cornette.
I think Cornette is intelligent, especially when it comes to the inner workings of wrestling, but he comes across as an immature potty mouth.
Yeah, I get that. I haven't noticed as much on the drive-through as on the experience, but yeah, he has two different podcasts that you can listen to. Speaking of podcasts, I think I just saw also Tony Schiavone had posted that Gerald Briscoe and Medusa were coming to ad-free shows family, which is Conrad Thompson's group of podcasters, along with Arn Anderson, Eric Bischoff, Tony Schiavone himself, Jim Ross, and Bruce Pritchard. So I guess you'll hear more stories and everything from Medusa and from Gerald Briscoe, with a lot of wrestling history between those two in their separate shows that they're going to have. Recently, Dark Parlor Originals held a virtual meet and greet. Well, they were supposed to, should I say, with Scott Hall, and it had to be ended before it could even start because Hall was not in a good place. Showed up intoxicated and just really bad fans have reached out to WWE and Triple H hoping that they'll get Scott some help. Dark Parlor could not even go live, as I said, but they said that if fans still wanted to buy merchandise from Scott Hall, they could get it signed by Scott or by Razor Ramon, whichever version they wanted. Unfortunately, due to stuff going on, he would not be personally signing stuff. So just in general, I hope that Scott figures things out, because as much as we've seen him at the accountability house and stuff like that with DDP, it doesn't seem to be working, and something has to give before he ends up being one of those stats where we're opening the show saying "Rest in peace, Scott Hall." It always amazes me that each time another superstar passes away, that we're not talking about somebody like Jake Roberts or Scott Hall. So thankfully, it looks like Jake seems to be in a good place working with AEW and being back at the accountability house, but someone's got to give with Scott for sure. WD is going to be staying in the Thunderdome, the Amway Center in Florida, for another month. They were supposed to be done at the end of this month, and that's why they moved Hell in a Cell from November 1st to the 25th, expecting to be gone, but they're going to stay there another month. It looks like they might even be there until January, but nothing's been officially announced on that front. But, of course, Vince McMahon is thinking of other ways of where he can go or getting people into the buildings, because he wants live fans like they do a bit at the Capitol Wrestling Center. But until they can get to that stage, they're better off in the Thunderdome. Plus, it's not being used, the Amway Center is, for any other sports, so they might as well get some money that way. So it's a win-win for both sides. But I know eventually Vince will get his way. And since they're in Florida, where things seem to be carte blanche, it'll happen. Finn Balor had surgery on Friday for his broken jaw. It was broken in two places after his match with Kyle O'Reilly. I believe it was on his left side. Broken two spots, had to get a tooth removed, also some plates and screws. But it doesn't look like they're going to take the title off him anytime soon, because he could be healed within 6 to 8 weeks. He obviously won't be part of Halloween Havoc, which is going to be on October 28th, I believe it is, part of NXT. They're even bringing back the Spin the Wheel and Make a Deal, and Shotzi Blackheart is going to be one of the, or be the host of the show. Hopefully, they bring back more things that reminisce the old WCW style of Halloween Havoc, the big pumpkin, the demon over top, part of the entranceway, because they did that for In Your House and brought out the old stuff that way when they did In Your House for NXT TakeOver. Good for nostalgia, and definitely using property that you own since WCW went down. Also, there's talk about season 3 for the Dark Side of the Ring. It got a lot of popularity after season 2, especially with Benoit and Owen Hart stories. And so, even though nothing's officially been announced, talk that interviews have been already done. Eric Bischoff had mentioned about doing some on 83 Weeks. And some of the topics look like they're going to involve Grizzly Smith and or more members of his family, such as Rockin' Robin, Sam Houston, and his other son, Jake the Snake Roberts. So there's a lot of avenues you can go with the creepiness of Grizzly Smith, which a lot of people heard in the movie Beyond the Mat when Jake visited his dad. And there's also just Jake Roberts in general himself, mixing everything from Beyond the Mat and also the resurrection of Jake, and doing their own spin on it. Plus, there's I heard maybe a show involving the WCW and Japan show that happened. There was a lot of controversy going on back there in the 90s, and also a Brian Pillman show. So knowing more of the back history of wrestling compared to the newer stuff, Chris, what sort of topics do you think you'd like to see tackled in Dark Side of the Ring?
Oh, hell. Well, the ones I would have thought of, you've already said. I'm trying to think of ones that haven't been mentioned that would be big. You know what? At this moment, I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Well, I think one that has not been talked about that they didn't do in the first two seasons that would be good to add to maybe a season 3 is the steroids scandal.
Yeah.
Vince McMahon was definitely facing a lot of problems with the government back in 93, 94. Brought in Jerry Jarrett to be his replacement to keep the company going if all hell broke loose and he did have to go to jail. So he's getting his ducks lined up in that way. That was a huge downward time for wrestling. Hogan had left WWE. I eventually went to WCW at that time, separating himself from everything involving Vince. So there was a lot of story that could be tackled if they decided to do the steroid scandal.
Yeah, and maybe the sexual allegations that I think it was B. Brian Blair and a bunch of them had against the WWF, which you can actually find on YouTube. It's a 2-parter of Donahue show with Vince McMahon on there defending the WWE.
Yeah, and even Dave Meltzer was, I believe, sitting either right beside Vince or a couple chairs down. Barry O was a part of it, which is Randy Orton's uncle, Barry Orton. It was involving one of the ring announcers, and somehow also Pat Patterson got dragged into that due to his sexual orientation. So, yeah, those are definitely two stories that could be done that are on the same line as what they did last season with even Dr. David Schultz doing the hit of John Stossels and stuff like that. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with season 3 and what's to come with that. Eva Marie is set to return apparently to WWE. She really wasn't that productive the last time she was there, so who knows if she's gotten any better. She had been on a celebrity version of Big Brother about 2 summers ago, and there's also talk that Melina will be coming back, even though she said no. But yeah, who knows, and where they're going to go is beyond me on that one. Natalia ended up getting a tooth knocked out again, but this time it was on her right side, I think right behind her canine tooth, a molar there. And it was knocked out by Lacey Evans during their Battle Royal this past Monday for #1 contendership. Andrade was not drafted at all during the 2 nights. Vince McMahon has given up on him, has no interest in him. He's the fiance of Charlotte Flair, but he didn't get drafted anywhere. He was, I guess, a project of Paul Heyman's, but with Heyman out of power of anything constructive in WWE, Andrade is being lost in the shuffle. And I guess it's going to take some time off to get surgery, but where he lands after that could be back still on Raw or could go down to NXT, where at least somebody like Triple H still likes him. But that looks like he'll be off TV for about a month. And Zelina Vega could probably end up over on SmackDown. I don't recall her being drafted either, but her husband, Aleister Black, was drafted over SmackDown. And WWE does a lot to keep their couples together, even though right now they're in Florida, and it wouldn't matter that one member of the couple went to work on a Monday and the other one went to work on a Friday. They're still hanging out and not traveling on separate groups. But it does still keep them, I guess, separated Raw and SmackDown if they can keep couples together in that regards, and especially during COVID, trying to keep things clean and healthy. So that's basically a lot of the news that's happening this week. I'm regretting not having any water or a co-host like Steven that can add stuff to this, but that's okay. Just looking ahead to upcoming events, Impact Wrestling is doing Bound for Glory on October 24th. Next week, going to do a rundown of their matches, do predictions, and it's going to be a double prediction show because Bound for Glory is doing their show on the Saturday, and on Sunday is going to be Hell in a Cell from WWE. But right now, the card for Bound for Glory looks like a Call Your Shot gauntlet match with the winner getting to choose a title opportunity challenge of their choosing. Eddie Edwards is going to take on Ken Shamrock. EC3 against Moose. There's going to be a 6-way X Division intergender match featuring Rohit Raju defending against Chris Bay, Jordan Grace, Trey Miguel, TJP, and Willie Mack. There's going to be a 4-way tag team title match with the Motor City Machine Guns defending against the Good Brothers, the North, and the tag team of Ace Austin and Madman Fulton. The Knockouts Division title will be on the line as Deonna Purrazzo defends against Kylie Ray, and the Impact World Championship will be on the line as Eric Young defends against Rich Swann. As I said, that's happening on October 24th. I believe it'll be available through the Impact app and also Fight TV, plus maybe where you also get your pay-per-views from your satellite or cable provider. And then the next day on the 25th on the WWE Network, there's going to be Hell in a Cell. As I said, currently only 3 matches have been announced, and all 3 of them are going to be in the cell. I'm wondering if the Amway Center cannot allow the structure to raise up and down, and we might see, like Impact Wrestling does with Lockdown, every match in the cell this time. But definitely 3 matches that have been announced will be in the cell. It'll be the first ever I Quit match in a cell with Roman Reigns defending the Universal title against Jey Uso. Drew McIntyre is going to defend the WWE title against Randy Orton. And Bayley is going to defend her SmackDown Women's Championship against Sasha Banks. So hopefully next week we'll be seeing more matches added before that pay-per-view, which is a week from this Sunday. And yeah, that's what's going on with upcoming events. Of course, last night was AEW's 1-year anniversary show. Chris, you said you saw some of it?
I sure did. I seen a little bit of it. I seen the opening match there, the tag team match, which was pretty decent. And then I seen the Jericho in the ring there. And you know what? That segment, I'd rather see people wrestle.
Yeah, sometimes they don't do the best of their segments. Also, it was revealed because Matt Hardy was with his family at ringside, and Tony Schiavone asked how he was, and said he was nearly perfect and ready to come back. And then a video started, and pictures of Matt Hardy were being burned with a Zippo and by a guy in a hoodie, and he basically turned around and almost did the whole thing. Like Vince McMahon said, it was me, Matt Hardy, who took him out a couple weeks earlier at a show that he shouldn't even been at. But he was backstage with Private Party and was attacked from behind. And Sammy Guevara is still wanting to continue his feud with Matt Hardy, even after a disastrous fall that happened at their last pay-per-view, which they're still willing to go and try and do more with them together. And each time these guys have gone into the ring against each other, somebody's getting hurt, whether set up or not, because even Guevara threw a chair at Matt Hardy on a Dynamite and nearly took his head off and cut him open. But they're going to continue their thing probably at full next month. There was also Sheeta defended against Big Swole and retained her title. As you said, the tag team title match saw FTR defeat the Best Friends, and they ended up running into Kip Sabian's video game, and Penelope Ford went and got Miro afterwards, and because the game got destroyed, and he destroyed Best Friends after their match. So I look to see those teams go against each other eventually. Just kind of a waste with Miro still. More of a comedy angle, even though he was brutal. Did a really bad camel clutch. The accolade, just really bad. I think possibly one of the better things was the TNT title match with Orange Cassidy. They went to a draw with Cody and Orange. They telegraphed that whole thing to the last second of referee about to come down and the bell rang. It's definitely a different way than WWE always does with 50-50 booking and people interfering or disqualifications happening so that neither of them look bad. So they still made Orange Cassidy look strong, but Darby Allin will be challenging Cody at Full Gear for the TNT Championship. And then Jon Moxley ended up winning his match over Lance Archer, but then got taken out by Eddie Kingston, who was beating him up, and the Lucha Brothers held off Authority from stopping it. And then really bad segment also involving the tag team titles was that they had a drum and they just randomly drew 4 teams, and magically the 4th team was the Young Bucks, and the winner of that 4-way is going to go against FTR at the pay-per-view. It's almost telegraphing that it's going to be the Young Bucks unless they pull something out of their ass and get the Young Bucks not winning that and frustrate them even more and extend the Young Bucks and FTR feud into the new year. But yeah, and they're also doing a tournament, which is probably going to lead to Paige and Omega in the finals at the Full Gear pay-per-view as well. So they do a lot of telegraphing in their things. And for it being an anniversary show, I mentioned it on Facebook when somebody else had posted about the show. AEW, I find, has a problem with celebrations. They make a big deal out of, oh, this is going to be a great show and we're celebrating this. And then it's a dud. Last week, they did it with Chris Jericho's 30th anniversary. Other than having vignettes, the final match with Jericho and Dr. Luther and all that was horrible. That was not a way to celebrate Chris Jericho's 30 years in wrestling. And then this was their 1-year anniversary show. You wouldn't have known it had they not said it, because there was nothing there to basically acknowledge and celebrate 1 year of being in business.
No balloon drop?
No balloon drops, no fanfare, no nothing. In a picture-in-picture, they showed some highlights, but I don't even think we got the picture-in-picture on TSN here in Canada. So, yay. Where were the highlights? There was nothing whoop-de-doo about a 1-year anniversary. So, that's my thoughts on AEW, unfortunately. If you'd like to submit any comments, contact me on our Facebook page. But yeah, I just didn't get the feeling that this was a momentous night. So before we head off to this week in wrestling, this past week, WWE did their draft. And the first night, they had people separated. I'm going to get that banner done. And this was the group in the Friday pool that could be looked at and be chosen between the two brands. And during the show, they did 4 rounds of drafting. So Raw ended up getting Drew McIntyre, who was already there, Asuka, and the Hurt Business. Everybody was basically drafted and kept to their show, so I don't get that factor. AJ Styles moved over from SmackDown to Raw. Naomi moved over. Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax were still on Raw. Ricochet stayed. Mandy Rose stayed because she just was sent over there a couple weeks earlier. Miz and Morrison got traded and moved shows. So did Xavier Woods and Kofi Kingston. Just after they ended up winning the SmackDown Tag Team titles, they got drafted to Raw, so they took the titles over that way. Dana Brooke had already gone over to Raw a couple of weeks earlier, and Angel Garza ended up staying on Raw. SmackDown ended up keeping Roman Reigns, getting Seth Rollins, so that was almost an exchange for AJ Styles for a main event level. They kept Sasha Banks. They ended up picking up Bianca Belair. Jey Uso stayed. Dominic and Rey Mysterio, they ended up coming over to SmackDown. So all that story with Seth Rollins is just moving from Monday night to Friday, because in the Smack Talk show the next morning, Buddy Murphy even got moved over as well. So that whole story with them, as I said, just basically switched days. Big E is staying on SmackDown, but he's separated from Woods and Kingston. And run. And Otis, who still has the money in the bank, and they're still trying to get that off him somehow, he got separated from his tag team partner, Tucker. So Heavy Machinery is done for at the moment as well. Any thoughts on some of the separations there, Chris?
Absolutely not. Because, and you know, the thoughts I have on that is that's one of the reasons why I kind of stopped watching WWE is the silly draft. I know it's a make-believe world and all that stuff, but when they bring in like football stuff into it, I just shake my head. I know it's another avenue for storylines and all that, but when you have switches where conveniently all these people that are involved in the same storyline go over to the other show, it's silly, and I can do without it. That's why I don't watch it. It's just absolutely it. Whatever happened to just the good old days? I don't like you, and I'm going to bitch smack you around the ring. All these different shows and stuff like that. It's just there's too much damn wrestling out there to give a crap about storyline.
Yeah, and also the other issue is, like, I can see separating some teams like that and getting them sort of a reset to be able to go somewhere. But when a whole story goes from Monday to Friday, it's a little bit too convenient. It would be nice if they were separated and each of them get a reset and go on a different path type deal. But yeah, some of it was a little too telegraphed in that regards. But also, when they end up sending people like Mandy and Dana over before the draft actually happened for no apparent reason, that kind of didn't make sense. And then why did people have to draft their own people back? Like, the exchanges should have only been, hey, we're going to take this person from this brand over to there, and not have to go, oh, well, we want to keep this guy. So it was kind of weird in that regards. And I don't think, unless they actually keep to these brands and not intermixing and, oh, this guy can go over for no apparent reason, it's not going to be taken seriously either, because then you don't have to wait for those dream matches for a year or 2 years before somebody gets to encounter somebody on the other brand. But looking at what happened on Monday, there was a lot bigger group available for Monday. They had 3 hours of drafting to end up doing, with a 7th round happening on Raw Talk after the show ended. But looking at some of the trades that happened there, round 1 saw Bayley staying over on SmackDown, the Street Profits switching over to SmackDown. So they ended up having both Kofi and Xavier of New Day just trade titles with the Street Profits and sent them on their way. So the title lineage is totally messed up now because forever whatever the SmackDown version is now jumped over to the Raw lineage and vice versa, just so they can keep their titles on there, because I certainly hope that they're not counting that as a title change, and now they're another first time SmackDown champion and stuff like that. Like, just ridiculous. The Fiend moved over to Raw. Randy Orton is staying on Raw, and Charlotte is staying on Raw. Round 2 saw Daniel Bryan stay on SmackDown, but bringing Kevin Owens over. Braun Strowman got sent from SmackDown over to Raw, along with Matt Riddle and Jeff Hardy. All three of them switched brands. Lars Sullivan has finally got a place on SmackDown. Corbin is staying there. Retribution is staying on Raw. Destroyed them and everything. Yeah, craziness. Keith Lee's staying there. Alexa Bliss moved over, and that made sense since she's with The Fiend and doing a thing with him. Also, in round 4, saw Sami Zayn, the Intercontinental Champion, drafted really late in the proceedings for a champion to be still up for grabs. Cesaro and Nakamura are staying as well. Elias got a home in Raw. Lacey Evans moved from SmackDown over to Raw. Sheamus moved from SmackDown to Raw. Ziggler and Rude moved back from Raw to SmackDown, even though they just went from SmackDown to Raw. Apollo Crews moved from Raw over to SmackDown. Nikki Cross moved from SmackDown to Raw. And Dabba-Kato and R-Truth are staying put. Then Carmilla is staying where she is. Aleister Black moved from Raw over to SmackDown. Titus O'Neil is staying at Raw. So is Peyton Royce and Akira Tozawa. So there's still a few people missing, but we'll see where they end up going, I guess, over the next couple weeks. But with any luck, they will be able to reset. But I'm not sure either on that one, because next month is the Survivor Series and it's supposed to be brand supremacy, brand versus brand. And how do you just get traded to a different brand and be loyal to them? We'll have to see how that plays out.
Hey, don't make sense.
I know, it's hard to do. But that concludes everything on the news and reviewing of the draft for this year. Jonesy, I'm going to turn it over to you now for This Week in Wrestling.
All right, here we are with This Week in Wrestling. This is October 9th till the 15th, and here we go. 38 years ago today in Chicago, Nick Bockwinkel defeated Otons to win the AA World Heavyweight Championship. Nick would hold the title for the next 501 days before being defeated in Japan by this man, Jumbo Tsuruta. Ooh, that was a hard one to say. 19 today at a SmackDown taping in Moline, Illinois, Billy Kidman defeated X-Pac to win the WCW Cruiserweight Championship. 18 years ago at an NWA TNA weekly pay-per-view taping in Nashville, Tennessee, Six-Pack defeats Kid Cash, Tony Malouk, Ace Steel, AJ Styles, Jose Maximo, and Joel Maximo in a ladder match to win this belt, and that was the TNA X Division Championship. We've got 16 years ago today in Tokyo, Japan, Kensuke Sasaki did Karazuki Fujiya to win the IWGP Heavyweight Championship. 14 years ago today, Impact taping at Universal Orlando. Former WWE champion made his TNA debut, and that was Kurt Angle, and he got a stare down with Samoa Joe. 9 years ago today, AAA presented Heroes Mortals 5 from Mexico. The show was the 5th annual Antonio Pina Memorial Show that was dedicated to the founder of AAA. And it's a happy 39th birthday to Daniel Pewter. You remember him as he has gained the fame in 2004 during the $1 Million Tough Enough and putting Kurt Angle in this type of submission move. One got that? That was the Kimura lock. And it's a happy 45th to Michael Stephen Mana, best known to wrestling fans as Stevie Richards. The well-traveled Philadelphian has wrestled for every major organization and a few notable independents in the country. Most notably, ECW, WWF, TNA, Shakira, and Ring of Honor. Richard held the WWF/E Hardcore Champion this many times, and only Crash Holly, who had 2, and Raven had 27. And the number that Richards had was 21 times he was the hardcore champion. And we're going on to
Half as many as R-Truth.
No, not as many as R-Truth. Not at all. Okay, here we go. So October 10th, 21 years ago today, here's a wrestling featured wrestling stars from the 80s and 90s from the Casino Magic Complex in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi. About 2,300 were in attendance, with just 29,000 homes watching on pay-per-view. They actually needed 40,000 pay-per-view buys were needed to break even. Rumor has it that Stone, the promoter, was so scared by his experience at the event, he was booking his flight out of Mississippi before the show ended. And for anyone that watched this, well, the show featured terrible matches. However, I do believe the build-up in the Blanchard-Stan Lane match was passable, especially the attack. I think it was at a limo or whatever before it. The build-up was pretty good. And then after that, it went to shit. We had a duel with Butcher and the one-man gang who fought to a double countout. But fans did get their money's worth with the main event. It had Jim Neidhart and King Bundy defeating Jake Roberts and Yokozuna. The match started as Roberts versus Neidhart, but Bundy and Yokozuna, who were advertised for in the singles bout, joined it because, well, Jake was kind of fucked out of his mind, and he treated the crowd to a sex show with the snake. It was entertaining, but a sad entertaining. And I do remember Sherry Martel was also there, and I think she was pretty drunk at that time as well. Rest all their souls. 14 years ago today, Dion Nicola Castinolenos, I did practice this, but Torres, Psychosis, was arrested after allegedly stealing a car from a 23-year-old man in Baja, California. He used a toy gun to steal the car, got in a high-speed chase, hit vehicles, including one with a pregnant 18-year-old woman in it. Torres would be released from WWE shortly after the incidents. Way to go, Psychosis. And today would have been the 74th birthday of Martin Austin Ruane, aka, I know I said that.
Benawani.
Thank you. It should have an accente goo on the damn thing. Anyways, that's Giant Haystacks, which is no relation to Haystacks Calhoun, though he was named after him. He was born 14 pounds and 6 ounces in Camberwell, England. He worked as a laborer in nightclub bouncer before joining at wrestling at the suggestion of a friend. Beginning his career on the British wrestling circuit in '67, he would form a tag team with Shirley Big Daddy Crabtree, and he was 169 kilograms in '75. His future feud with Big Daddy would draw high ratings for the ITV in Britain. Haystacks refused to wrestle on Sundays due to being a devoted Roman Catholic. Boy, years later, that wouldn't work for him for pay-per-views. He stood at 6'11" and weighed 685 pounds at his heaviest. He would wrestle also for Stampede Wrestling in Canada, the Catch Wrestling Association in Germany and Australia, and World Championship Wrestling in the United States as... Anyone fill in the blank?
No idea.
Really? He was Loch Ness.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was returned to England, or he was returned. He briefly was a member of the Dungeon of Doom, but following a cancer diagnosis, he returned to England and lived out the remainder of his days there. After a lengthy battle with cancer, he would die in his home in Prestwich, England on November 29th, 98. He was 52. Giant Haystacks was 310 kilograms, and Viscera from WWE, he weighed 221 kilograms. So it gives you, like, that Giant Haystacks was one big friggin' guy. So let's move on over to October 11th. And we got 43 years ago today in Memphis, Tennessee, Bill Dundee and Jerry Lawler won the AWA tag belts, defeating Soldat Ustinov and Doug Summers, who was substituting for this guy who was billed from the Soviet Union, even though he is American, and left for the WWF. Do you have an idea who that might have been? No.
No.
That's okay. Boris Zukov.
Boris,
okay. Is who we're talking about. 42 years. Geez, my little fire here just fell. There we go. 21 years ago in Tokyo, Japan, Jushin Thunder Liger defeated Kendo Kashin to win the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship for the 10th time. 13 years ago today, WWE releases Teddy Hart from his developmental contract. 10 years ago, at a SmackDown taping in Dallas, Randy Orton wins a 41-man battle royal to earn the WWE Championship later in the show. Randy Orton defeated Mark Henry via disqualification in the show's main event. And it's a happy 32nd birthday to Trevor Mann, now in the WWE as Ricochet. He has worked as Helios in Shakira, and Lucha Underground, first champion, winning the Aztec Cup. The question is, what name did Trevor Mann go under in Lucha Underground?
Prince Puma.
Excellent. And I seen him as Prince Puma before I seen him as
Ricochet.
Yeah, Ricochet, that guy. So moving on to October 12th, 34 years ago today in Dallas, Texas, Kevin Von Erich defeated Black Bart to win the WCCW World Heavyweight Championship. 31 years ago today, James Coco Beer and WWF executive Jim Troy were involved in a physical altercation while on their European tour. Ware was fired immediately following the altercation, which saw him tackle Troy through a plate glass window. Later was found that Troy was the instigator after he used racial slurs during an argument. Troy would eventually resign from the company, and James was rehired. My question on that was, who did the executive insult? Was it Coco Beware, or was it the Bird? I just wonder. The story doesn't say that maybe the Bird will.
Well, racial slurs, so I'm going to say Coco.
Probably Coco, but some birds, especially parrots, there's some nasty things. 28 years ago today in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada, Bret Hart defeated Ric Flair to win the WWF Championship. Hart was the first man to win the WWF's top prize at an untelevised event since Hogan did it in 1984. It would happen again when Diesel did it in 94. 22 years ago today on Nitro in Chicago, Sting and the Warrior defeated Bret Hart and Hollywood Hogan via disqualification. This would be Warrior's last televised match ever. He would wrestle one more classic in WCW, that being the infamous Hogan Warrior rematch at Halloween Havoc a couple of weeks later. What do you remember about that terrible Shawn?
Oh, gee, the flash paper, the stupid Hogan seeing Warrior in the mirror, but nobody else did. Yeah, horrible.
You know what?
Oh, and let's not forget the
That
25 minute uh, ranting of Warrior on his debut.
Oh yes. I though the match was terrible, I like the cheesiness of Warrior being in the mirror. I thought that was, that's WCW's touch. Dungeon of Doom. I remember when I think Paul was seeing things in the mirror well at one point in WCW. So it was kind of their thing. They did things a little USA campiness, and sometimes it was funny, other times it was just bad. I'm just looking to see where I am. I must have just switched. Yes, that's what it is. So here we go. 16 years ago today, at a TNA Impact taping in Canada's, Bobby Roode and Eric Young defeated Christopher Daniels and James Storm to win the NWA World Tag Team Championship. 12 years ago, The Wrestler made its United States premiere at the New York Film Festival. Though the movie just made $44 million at the box office, it would earn many honors, including the Golden Lion at the Venice Film Festival, an Academy Award nomination for Mickey Rourke, and an honor for Marissa Tomei. The question for that is, what was Mickey Rourke's character's wrestling name in the movie? Do you remember? No, either that or he's not there. So it's Randy the Ram Robinson. We're going to go on to October 13th. 45 years ago today, in New York City, Bruno Sammartino fought to draw with Alma for the WWF Championship when both men were deemed unable to continue due to excessive bleeding. 39 years ago today, in Allentown, Pennsylvania, Mr. Fuji and Mr. Sato defeated Tony Gurria and Rick Martel to win the WWF Tag Team Championship. 30 years ago today, Ivan and Nikita Koloff defeated the Rock and Roll Express, Morton and Gibson, to win the NWA World Tag Team Championship. 28 years ago today, at a Wrestling Challenge taping in Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada, Money Inc., Ted DiBiase, and IRS defeated the Natural Disasters, Typhoon and Earthquake, to win the WWF Tag Team Championship. And 14 years ago today, The Marine, starring John Cena, opens in theaters, and at the time was the most successful film for WWE Studios. It did make its budget back, which was a plus a couple bucks on top of that, until The Call, which was in 2013, topped those numbers, which is actually a good movie. If you've never seen The Call, it's a really good movie. Today would have been the 94th birthday of Edward Władysław Sputnik, best known to wrestling fans as Killer Kowalski. Born to Polish immigrants in Windsor, Ontario, Canada, Kowalski majored in electrical engineering in college and worked at the Ford plant in Detroit to help pay his way, getting paid just $50 a week. He began his career as Tarzan Kowalski in 47, but also wrestled as Hercules Kowalski, the Polish Apollo, and Killer Kowalski, one that stuck. He even legally changed his name to Walter Kowalski in 1963. Kowalski's earliest recorded match in May 48, and by the end of the year, he was taking on my personal favorite, Orville Brown, for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. He trained many now famous wrestlers and went into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2003 and passed away at the age of 8. October 14th, we got 29 years ago today in Providence, Rhode Island, Tito Santana defeated Rick Martel to win the 1989 King of the Ring tournament. 16 years ago today on Raw from Montreal, Chris Jericho and Christian defeated the Hurricane and Kane to win the WWE World Tag Team Championship. 9 years ago today, Louis Vincent Albano, a.k.a. Captain Leno died of a heart attack in his home in Westchester County, New York. He was 76. And I do wonder, when he had his massive heart attack, was it so bad that his elastics just popped right off his face? I just wonder about those things. But he was born in July 29th, 1933, to Italian-American parents in Rome, Italy. Lou was one of 9 children, 4 of whom died in adulthood. So good for you, Captain Lou, sticking around. Albano was a 2-sport athlete in high school and was captain of the football team, which is how he got his nickname that would stick with him through his entire career. So, however, poor behavior and cheating on a final exam got him kicked out of college. He joined the Army and was honorably discharged due to injury playing football. Lou tried boxing, wrestling. And Shawn, you're there?
Yep.
All right. So here's a question. When Lou, when he started as a baby face, his nickname was A, Flying, B, B-Ball, C is Thunderball, or D, Leaping.
Let's go with Thunderball.
Oh, right. A Thunderball. I'm glad I made that one up. It was Leaping, which is like, I don't think he ever. But Lou switched to managing due to his limited wrestling skills, and he was mint on a microphone. Lou would leave the WWF in 86, but return briefly in 94. He would make many television and movie appearances in the 90s, including Mario on the Super Mario Brothers Super Show, cameos in 227, Hey Dude, Miami Vice, and a recurring spot on the 80s version of Hollywood Squares. He played a bad guy version of himself in the wrestling movie Body Slam, and had a role in Wise Guys. In addition to appearing in Girls Just Fun, Captain Lou would appear in 3 other Cyndi Lauper music videos, and Cyndi would write the foreword for Albano's autobiography, Often Imitated and Never Duplicated, in 2008. Albano is a member of the WWE Hall of Fame class of 96, the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame 2009, and the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame class of 2012. And of course, he is a huge reason why the rock and roll wrestling era happened. So I want to throw that in because I don't see it in my notes. 7 years ago today, WWE SmackDown surpasses Gunk for the second most episodes by a weekly episodic television series ever, with 624. 7 years ago. So it's amazing that both Raw and SmackDown now are both done over 1,000 episodes. That's crazy. It's a happy birthday for former WWE diva and WCW Nitro Girl turned dancer and actress Stacy Keibler. Stacy broke into the wrestling business in 1999 by earning a contest to become a WCW Nitro Girl. And October 15th, not a whole hell of a lot happened, enough for me to copy and paste and edit. So it is, though, October 15th. It's a happy 38th birthday to Alipate Fifita. Man, that's a hard one to say. Best known to wrestling fans as Tama Tonga, who is the adopted son of Tonga Feta, a.k.a. Haku and Ming. So happy birthday to you on this fine day. And that is all that is from the history of wrestling this week.
Yeah, well, once again, packed week. A lot of history to look back on, and people passing and being born. So, yeah, thank you once again for putting that together for us. And that wraps up this week's edition of the Scumbags Wrestling Podcast. Last night, hopefully you joined us for Fantasy Warfare Tournament, where we discovered, in our opinion, the greatest face turn of all times. And yeah, I'm not going to give a spoiler, but you can go back on our YouTube channel and check that out. Next Wednesday, you'll be able to see us break down 16 guys who worked for WWE during the Hogan era and never had the gold. They might have been an Intercontinental Champion, but they never got near the world title because Hogan was happily holding it for 3+ years at a time, or a year at a time after he got back from Savage. So be sure to check out the greatest wrestler to never hold the WWF title when we break that down next week. And we'll be back also next week with a double prediction show. Hopefully we'll have people join us and we'll look at the news. But until then, Chris, you got anything more?
No, I do not. I have nothing.
Okay. Well, on that note, thank you everybody for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.